In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about bass fishing tournaments. I'm going to cover every level of the sport from high school and college to the weekend series and just for fun tournaments, as well as the top level professionals, going over the pros and cons of each tournament type and how much it'll cost you to fish in them. And to wrap up the video, I'm going to interview some of the best pro bass fishermen on the planet to ask them how they got to where they are and how they like or dislike fishing as a job. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! Now, before we get started, I want to point out the timestamps down there on the video playhead, either on mobile or on desktop. You can click to a certain section of the video that more closely applies to you, and so feel free to skip around. If you're an adult fisherman, you might not want to listen to high school fishing and vice versa. And the last thing before we jump in, this video is brought to you by NSR Fishing. If you aspire to fish in college, NSR can help you do that. More about them here in a second. A bass fishing tournament can take many forms, but most often it is one or two fishermen, either together or as a boater and a co-angler, who go out on the water in their bass boats at a certain specified time, bring in usually their 5 biggest bass, weigh them in, and then release them at the end of the day. That's kind of your overall bass fishing tournament setup. Now, you may be a kayak angler, a john boat, a bank fisherman, and you're thinking, can I still compete in fishing tournaments? The answer is yes. There are tons of options out there. Either use Google to find fishing tournaments and clubs near your area where you live, or get on the Fishing Chaos app. There are tons of length-based fishing tournaments for you to fish. But in this video, I want to talk about tournaments that give you upward mobility, the ability to climb up the ladder to go from youth fishing to high school to weekend, semi-pro, and then hopefully professional bass fishing. And in my opinion, the only 2 bass fishing tournament organizations that give you upward mobility, at least that are the most structured, are Bassmaster and Major League Fishing. So those are the 2 that I'm going to talk about in this video. There's tons of opportunities for every angler to get involved in those tournament trails. And so I'm going to start with the one that I think is a little more accessible for every angler across the country and across the world, and that is the Major League Fishing ecosystem. So let's start with the smallest level, and that is the high school and youth level tournaments. As of right now, Major League Fishing has 9 high school regionals that take place on or close to the same body of water as the college tournaments do. So wherever college fishing goes, high school fishing goes as well. You do not have to have a bass boat to compete in high school fishing, but you do have to have a friend or a family member who's got a bass boat. So the best thing you can do, if you are a freshman in high school, you are entering high school right now, and you don't have a bass boat, is to make friends quickly with somebody who does. Now, these tournaments, because there are only 9 of them across the country, which although most of them are in like the southeast region of the United States, from Texas to Florida to Tennessee, kind of that region, there's only 9 of them though. And so if you live in like Oklahoma or Missouri, or even like west of I-35, you may have to do a little bit of traveling to get to those tournaments. And so if you do live out in California, there are other options for you that Major League Fishing might not totally take care of. And again, use Google to find the best options for you where you live. I had some amazing experiences in high school fishing, and I did it when it was just in its infancy. It is an amazing program now to, like I said, get your feet wet, understand how tournaments work, make good decisions on the water and tons of bad ones, and learn until you make your way into college fishing, which is the next step up. And so I get asked all the time, how do I join a college fishing team? Are there scholarships? Do I have to fundraise for myself? Should I go public school, SEC, Big Ten, or should I go private school? Well, the great thing about it is that scholarships are now very widely available at tons of different schools, and the best way to get yourself on a scholarship bass fishing team is by getting yourself in the NSR program. NSR, or National Scouting Report, has been in business for 43 years, getting high school athletes recruited to play their sport in college. And in 2021, NSR Fishing was launched, and it helps anglers in high school get connected with college fishing coaches and placed on a scholarship college fishing team. That's crazy. Once you are in the program as a high school angler, NSR will rank you as a 1 to 5 star, just like they do in every other sport. NSR recruiters will even go on the water at your tournaments to watch how you fish, what kind of decisions you make, how good you are with your gear, with your electronics. And again, I help you guys with social media, with video editing, with Instagram, TikTok, That way you guys can become full anglers that a college fishing team would want. At the time I'm recording this, NSR is 100% on getting high school seniors in their program placed on college fishing teams. That is so cool. If you are a loved one or in high school and you want to fish in college, I will leave NSR Fishing down in the video description below, but let's talk about Major League Fishing's college circuit. MLF college tournaments are a team format. That means you and a partner are in the same bass boat going for the same 5 fish to weigh in at the end of the day. Just like high school fishing, there is 9 events all around the country, and there's a small entry fee, $50 to $100 per tournament. Again, if you're on a college team, your school covers all the expenses. And at each of those 9 regionals, a certain percentage of the field, usually around 10%, qualifies for the national championship. So you can fish any of the 9, 4 out of the 9, 9 out of the 9, and that'll give you the best chance of making that national championship. And once you are fishing in the national championship, a certain small number, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 teams, will qualify to fish in higher levels of the MLF ecosystem, with one college fisherman getting to fish in the highest championship MLF has, which is their Red Crest. But I understand not everybody can afford to go to college, and not everybody wants to go to college. So the next level up that I call the weekend series is the BFLs. The BFLs is the first organization up the ladder in MLF that is not a team event. It is an individual event with you as the bass boat owner or the bass boat operator having the front of the boat, and then co-angler having the back of the boat. The BFLs are a fantastic weekend series tournament that happen close to home. There are tons of tournaments, tons of regions in the BFL ecosystem, and so no matter where you live, there are tournaments within 2 to 3 hours at the most from your house. And the cost of fishing is relatively low, both for the boater, about $200 of an entry fee, and co-angler, about $100 for the entry fee, and it gives you a good chance to travel a little bit, but not blow the bank trying to fish professionally. Now, one of the cool things about the BFLs is that you don't have to sign up for the entire region. So you can do 1 tournament, 2 tournaments, 3 tournaments. You can sign up for multiple regions. I could fish in a region in New York if I wanted to, and I live in Texas. So you don't have to fish exactly where you live. Of course, it does help. The option is there, but you can fish as many or as little as you want. But there is a points system. So I talked about upward mobility. If you want to work your way up into the BFLs to make the BFL regional tournaments, then fishing all 3 in your region will give you the best chance at being high enough in the points to reach those regional championships. Now, the BFLs are one-day tournaments. If you finish high enough in the points, you'll reach the regional, which are multi-day tournaments, but still have an entry fee. That entry fee is $330 for a boater, and half that price, I think it's $165 for a co-angler. But the payout is much higher. And at that regional championship, if you do well enough in that as a boater or a co-angler, you will qualify for the BFL All-American. Again, Major League Fishing has a whole bunch of stairs to climb up to get yourself higher and higher into the tournament world. The BFL All-American is a no entry fee championship, so once you've paid your singular entry fees for the singular BFLs and the regional, you've made your way to the championship, there is no entry fee, and you're competing for $100,000. And the highest placing boater at the BFL All-American, the person who wins the $100,000, will not only qualify to fish the Toyota Series Championship for $200,000, they will also qualify to fish Red Crest, which, like I said, is MLF's highest championship. So it's possible, if you fish the BFLs, to just put in $1,430 total in entry fees and have the chance to fish for at least $535,000. That is why I say that the BFLs have the best chance to move up in the ladder in the ecosystem and still make the most amount of money. Now, you're still not a pro if you fish the BFLs. That is, I think, reserved for the Toyota Series and the Bass Pro Tour, but the BFLs are a great place to get your feet wet close to home and have some good tournament experience. The next level up the ladder in tournament fishing of Major League Fishing is the Toyota Series. That is the true semi-professional fishing, and because it is a little bit higher, it also costs a little bit more, but is still open to everyone. You do not have to qualify for anything to fish the Toyota Series. You just have to have enough cash in the bag. The Toyota Series is also a boater and a co-angler trail, with the boater entry fee being right now $1,700 per tournament and the co-angler being $550 per tournament. So significantly higher than the BFLs are. It's definitely a jump from the BFLs to the Toyotas. Now, there are 6 6 divisions around the country with 3 tournaments per division. And the payout for every Toyota Series tournament is $50,000 to $80,000 depending on your bonuses. Now, just like the BFL regionals, if you do well enough in the Toyota Series regionals, you will qualify for the Toyota Series Championship. Like I said, has a top prize of $200,000 that is no entry fee. And the winner of the Toyota Series Championship gets their invitation to fish in Major League Fishing Redcrest for $300,000. Now, like I said, there are 6 regions with 3 tournaments in each region. And so if you are one of the top 5 anglers in terms of points in your region, your 3 tournaments, you will qualify for the next level up in MLF, which is the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals. This is, I would consider, a professional level tour. Now, once you get all the way to the Toyota Series, the Invitationals, you probably don't even need this video anymore, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys the full understanding of how the MLF tournament organization works. And so I say, now that we understand MLF, let's go over to Bassmaster, because there are some similarities, but there's also some differences. So starting at the bottom of the Bassmaster organization, we have the high school and youth fishing level. As of right now, there are only 4 high school opens, and those usually take place at like high key places. So Gunnersville, Chickamauga, the Harris Chain, basically anywhere in like the southeast United States, maybe Texoma, Sam Rayburn, Toledo Bend. And so if you don't live near any of those big time fisheries that host a bunch of tournaments, it's going to be hard for you to get to those tournaments. That's why I say that Major League Fishing in terms of high school and college is more accessible, because at least there's 9 of them. So you're probably going to be close to at least 1 or 2, whereas Bassmaster, it might be quite a trek. So they are harder to get to, but it does make them more prestigious of high school tournaments to win. And moving up to college fishing, Bassmaster has multi-day college tournaments. That's what separates them from Major League Fishing. MLF's tournaments in terms of high school and college are 1-day derbies. High school and college for Bassmaster are, I think, 2 to 3 day tournaments. For college, for sure, 3-day derbies. Just like MLF, there is a $100 or so entry fee for a tournament that hopefully, if you're on a scholarship school, they will pay for it all. And if not, that's relatively cheap for a tournament. And then a top percentage of the field, sometimes 10, sometimes more, qualifies for the national championship, just like MLF. But instead, MLF is 1 day, Bassmaster is 3. At the Bassmaster College National Championship, the top 4 placing teams, again, it is a team tournament. Those top 4 teams compete in a March Madness style bracket, where you compete against 1 angler each day, getting down to the final angler, and that angler gets to fish in all the Bassmaster Opens, which we'll talk about here in a second, as well as the Bassmaster Classic for free. Now, moving up in the Bassmaster tournament organization, we don't have any kind of weekender BFL series. We have what's called the Bass Nation. Bass Nation tournaments are boater and co-angler, just like most other weekend series tournaments, but the different thing about them is that they don't always take place, organized by Bassmaster. They are oftentimes organized by local fishing clubs. The first step in getting involved in Bass Nation is joining a BASS affiliated club. And so Bass Nation isn't really a traditional trail like the BFLs or the Toyota Series. You have to be a part of a club, an affiliated BASS club, which is probably a collection of anglers that live around your house, and then through the local tournaments they host, internally in that club, they will send a certain number of boaters and co-anglers to fish in the Bass Nation regional. So you can't just apply for a Bass Nation regional tournament like you can a BFL or a Toyota Series. You have to qualify through your individual club, and they all do that differently. So again, if you want to be a part of Bass Nation, you've got to join a club, and the best way to do that is to use Google. The entry fee for the Bass Nation tournaments is about the same in terms of boater and co-angler as the BFLs, about $200 for boater and $100 for co-angler. And if you do well enough as a boater or a co-angler in that Bass Nation regional, you will qualify for the Bass Nation Championship, at which the top 3 boaters in the championship will qualify to fish the Bassmaster Classic. So there is less ladders to climb to get to the highest level of tournament, the Bassmaster Classic, in the BASS ecosystem, but it's pretty hard to beat all the guys in your local club, all the guys in your local area, and to be a top finishing boater in the nation. That's pretty difficult, but it does produce some of the best fishermen out there. And so I know a lot of guys that fish the Bass Nation where I live and the BFLs. That is a good, relatively low cost way to fish tons of tournaments and give yourself a good chance at climbing the ladder in both organizations simultaneously. Now, one other cool thing Bassmaster has that Major League Fishing does not is called the Bassmaster Team Trail. This again is a locally affiliated club tournament type deal, but it gets you qualified to fish in those Bassmaster Team Trail tournaments. So in Texas, I have Bass Champs, Texas Team Trail, I think it's called TTT, the Triple T. There are tournaments you can fish as kids or adults. There's really no age limitations. And if you do well enough in those local team tournaments, again, not affiliated per se with Bassmaster or MLF, they are their own local trails. Bassmaster takes a certain number of those affiliated trails, the certain number of those top finishers, and says, hey, you guys did well enough in your region in those Bassmaster quasi-affiliated tournaments, and so you can qualify to fish in our Bassmaster Team Trail. And in the Bassmaster Team Trail, there is really only one tournament to get pulled up to qualify for, and that is the Team Trail Championship. And I believe the top 4 teams in that championship split off just like the college kids did in a March Madness style bracket, and the number 1 boater in that bracket will win a spot in the Bassmaster Classic. So honestly, now that I think about it, in terms of getting to the highest championship possible, the Team Trail is probably the easiest way to go, because you just have to do well enough in a local team tournament, get pulled up to the championship, do well enough in that tournament. So really, you only have to win or top 3 in 2 tournaments to have a shot at getting to fish the Bassmaster Classic. That's pretty cool. Now, the next level up in the Bassmaster ecosystem is the Bassmaster Opens, now called the EQs, the Elite Qualifiers. There are 9 of those. They are an individual event with a co-angler. It is $1,800 for the boater and $475 for the co-angler. Again, similar to the Toyota Series on MLF side. But the one thing to keep in mind is that the next level above the Opens is the Elite Series. And really, the only way nowadays, the only way they've set it up to be able to climb that ladder is if you fish all 9 Opens. So at that point, I would call it semi-pro to almost professional level fishing, because you are traveling to 9 events across the country on brand new bodies of water you may have never been to before, throw in a whole bunch of money in gas, entry fees, food, lodging. And so if you want to make the jump to the Opens, go for it, but it is definitely a tough tournament trail, very similar in cost to the Toyota Series, but in order to climb any kind of ladder, you've got to fish all 9, which will cost more than climbing the ladder by just fishing 3 of the MLF's Toyota Series. But like I said, if you are in the top 9 anglers in the points at the end of the Bassmaster Open season, you will qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series, which is their highest level of tournament. So now that we have discussed every tournament fishing opportunity across the nation, I want to show you guys some interviews I did with some of the top professional anglers in the country. These guys have won over $5 million combined fishing professionally, and I think that their paths to success, their paths to making it into pro fishing are different than one another's, and I think you'll learn a lot from these interviews. So enjoy my questions with Jordan Lee, Jacob Wheeler, and Alton Jones Jr.
Has it started yet?
We are here with Bass Pro Tour angler, 2-time classic champion, Mr. Jordan Lee, good friend of mine here on tour. What level of tournaments did you fish at all as a kid? Before we even talk about your journey, what did you do growing up?
My first really taste of tournament fishing, I guess, well, my first tournament was in a John boat. A buddy of mine, Gavin Ellis, who got me started in fishing, there was a little lake, a little horsepower lake, and he's like, man, come fish a tournament with me. Yeah. And because he knew I started getting into fishing. I was just fishing ponds and stuff, and he was a friend of mine I played baseball with. So we went and fished a tournament, and man, that first tournament, I mean, I was hooked. Started fishing a lot around the house, and then I got into a junior club. Mm-hmm. This was pre-high school fishing. Got it. Same type deal. After that, I went and started fishing as a co-angler in a little bit bigger tournaments. There used to be called Bass Weekend Series, okay, which that's like BFLs. Yeah, yeah. So did those, and then I kind of graduated to a boater, and this was like late high school, and I fished some as a boater.
So yeah. Talk about your college experience and how that prepared you.
Yeah, you know, college fishing, it's changed a lot. Obviously, there's a lot more people doing it now. But when I first started, I mean, it was a lot of camaraderie. You know, we went and had a good time. I mean, it was serious, but you know, we were competitive, but it's just, you know, we were having fun too. Yeah. And that's kind of what it was the first couple of years. And then you know, when they offered, I think when it really became more serious is when they offered to go to the Bassmaster Classic. Yeah. And so then it was like, okay, well, we got something kind of to fish for. You know, especially the last 2 years of school. I mean, that's a big opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
There's not, you know, 3,000 boats or anything. It's like, you know, it's pretty manageable how many people are doing it. So it's like you have a legit shot.
So for relatively cheap entry fee-less or small entry fee, you were able to make your way to the Bassmaster Classic. At what age? 22, 23?
Yeah, I was
21?
probably, yeah, something like that, 21, 22.
Gotcha, okay. And so for those of y'all who might think that he made the Classic means he made it, not necessarily. So what was your journey like after fishing the Classic, graduated college? How did you make the next step?
Yeah, so it kind of worked out great for me. When I made the Classic, I just graduated school. So I had that kind of behind me, and I had the Classic, and I did well in the Classic, so that kind of freed up where I knew I was going to be able to, you know, put gas in my boat all year.
Yeah,
and I had a little help from my parents too, but I didn't really want them to fully support me. You know, I knew I was kind of on my own after college. You know, I felt that sense of, you know, okay, it's time for me to figure it out.
Yeah.
But after that, yeah, I fished the Opens for a year. I fished all 9. Had some tough tournaments. Had some good tournaments too that year, and ultimately I qualified for the elites in 2014. So
that was your first year fishing the Opens.
First year fishing the Opens, and
qualified.
And like I said too, I mean, the college fishing was different. The Opens were definitely different. There was a lot of good. You know, there was good talent, but I don't think it's comparable to what it is now, how you have so many hardcore guys really, that's what they want to do is fish the elites. 15 was my first year through, 19, I guess.
And then you accepted your invitation to the Bass Pro Tour.
That's correct.
Which is where you are now.
That's where I'm at now. So
catching tons of fish.
It was, it's been a cool, you know, journey really, just, you know, seeing everything change and fishing through all the different circuits and stuff like that. So my top 2 tips in any fishing, number 1, you need to be a really good caster. I mean, I haven't seen a good fisherman out here on tour that's a bad caster. The next one I would say is right here, the electronics. You know, it's really, you see one of them right here.
He's just got one of them. He's got 4 or 5.
4.
His brother Matt's got 5.
He's got 5. I'm not that cool. I got 4, but being able to understand side scan, down scan, and now the forward, the active target, and the pan optics. I mean, I mean, a lot of guys are catching a lot more fish because of it. The pro fishing dream, it's tough on a lot of different aspects. I mean, number 1, you either are gonna not live very luxurious starting out. You gotta really, and just in general, because you don't know how your year's gonna be. You gotta be, you know, nickel and dimer. You have to, and when it comes to, you know, the money side of it, I mean, the entry fees are high. Mm-hmm. You know, we still pay, you know, 40 to 50,000 on any top level. Yeah. So, you know, having a fallback plan, and it's easy for me to say because I have had some success, but you don't know when that's going to come or if it's going to come.
Correct.
But just be prepared for that, getting into it, and I guess the other thing I'd say about pro fishing. I mean, it is awesome. It's an awesome, you know, job to have. But the competition, you know, you just have to be. If you ever think you're good enough to compete, you need to fish more. You need to understand that, you know, it's. Yeah, you may make it to that level, but if you get here, you're good enough. And it's just, you know, jumping through the steps, not jumping straight into the Opens. Fishing more around the house, you know, if you're just getting started, or even if you're, you know, more of a, you know, you feel like you're ready, I still think fish around the house, and if you're competing in those tournaments, you're ready to jump to the next level.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jordan.
Yeah,
Let's hop over to, I don't know who's next. Alton Wheeler?
Yeah, those guys can't fish.
We're here with Alton Jones Jr., one of the hottest anglers on the planet right now. Where are you ranked on the Bass fan rankings?
4.
4?
I think 4. Yeah.
On the planet. It's better than me. Better than you.
Unless you're Jacob Wheeler. If you're watching this, not better than you.
While some of the other guys fish college fishing, they might have fished different levels. What was your experience with tournament fishing growing up?
Unlike a lot of these guys, like they started fishing jackpot tournaments and stuff when they were like a little kid.
Yeah.
I didn't fish hardly any tournaments, until I was age 16 when I could like control my own boat. Like I probably fished a couple Skeeter owners tournaments with my dad.
Yeah.
And I fished like 2 Wednesday night jackpots growing up. And that was like my entire tournament experience until I was 16.
Got it.
Well, now I had a lot of experience fishing. So as my dad traveled across the country, I traveled with him and I got to practice with him at every single event. He fished the FLW Tour and the Bassmaster Elite Series like at the same time.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're talking like 16 events a year, 16 different bodies of water a year, and I'm spending 3 days, daylight to dark, practicing. And like for people that tournament fish, they know that like that's the most important part of tournament fishing is like learning how to practice and learning how to find fish. So while I hadn't done the competition aspect of it, I had gotten like the best crash course of practice that you could get. And then, fast forward, I'm 16 years old. At that time, there were still co-anglers on the Bassmaster Elite Series. The day I turned 16, I was in the co-anglers, and they only had that for 1 year. Then they went to the Marshall program. But
got it.
So I got to fish with a lot of different pros doing that, seeing how they fish.
Did you ever get your dad?
I never drew my dad, but I don't think they would have let that happen.
Okay.
Like I think if that would have done it in the computer, I think they would have done it back. Like
got it.
But I got to fish with a lot of guys that now I compete against today, like Britt Myers, Terry Scroggins, Steve Kennedy. I fished with Rick Clunn, Kelly Jordan. It's really cool now. Like I've been in my pro career for 6 years, and now I have guys that I had as co-anglers on the Opens that are now fishing the Elite Series.
Exactly.
So it's kind of cool to like see that start to come full circle.
Exactly. So after high school, I guess you fished a little bit when you were 16. Did you do any college fishing?
I did not do any college fishing. Well, I say that. I went to Baylor University. Baylor University, they didn't have like a super serious program. It was more just like the guys wanted to go get away for a weekend. Like it wasn't really about the fishing. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And we have so many good opportunities in Texas. Now, I don't want this to discourage anyone from college angling. Like for most people, that is the best avenue.
Yeah.
But you have to go to a college that has an active program. I think Baylor's picked it up a lot. But when I was there, you got to realize that was 10 years ago now. I'm old.
Oh boy.
They weren't that serious. So I fished Bass Champs and Texas Team Trail. In my opinion, at the time, there's some stuff now in Alabama that I think is at the same level, but they were the top level team tournaments that were available.
And those are called a jackpot tournament, right?
No, I would call those more like an amateur, like team tournament. When I think jackpotter, I think of like
a Wednesday night.
A Wednesday nighter, 3 hours for $10 in a hat and go.
Cool.
So like that's a jackpot derby.
Gotcha.
But you got a lot of really, really good fishermen in those events. I think some of the best non-professional anglers you'll ever run into are in those tournament trails. Now they have the ABT 100s in Alabama.
Yep.
Same type deal.
Exactly.
But yeah, so Bass Champs, Texas Team Trail was kind of like where I cut my teeth in tournament fishing.
How did you make your way from being a local team trail guy to being a professional? What trail did you choose?
Yeah. So really when I was coming out of college, like there really was only one option, and that was the Bassmaster Opens, trying to qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. So I graduated from Baylor in 2014. 2015, I jumped straight into the Opens, which was a whole nother level of competition above anything I'd ever seen. My first season got my teeth kicked in. Like so it's funny, it's like my first 2 events, I finished like 25th and 30th, which are good finishes, like good points. And I'm like, this is going to be just like Bass Champs. This is going to be, we're going to do great, because I had a lot of success at Bass Champs, and that's one of the things that funded my start.
Correct.
I obviously had, I had a boat for my parents. Like there was a lot of things that I was very lucky to have. But as far as, hotels and time on the road, entry fees, like those wins that I had at those other tours kind of funded that.
Correct.
But then after those first 2 checks where I thought it was going to be easy, I did not cash a check the rest of the year. So out of 9 events, I cashed the first 2, 7 straight bombs. Okay, and then, it's kind of starting to creep into my head, like, am I really good enough to do this?
Okay.
Like, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. Second year, I had a much better year. Cash checks in 8 of 9 Opens, had a couple top 10s and a win, and made the Bassmaster Elite Series and the Classic that year. So with a win in the Opens, I'm qualified for the Classic on Lake Conroe.
Cool. Yeah, and I talked about, like you guys just saw my overview of all the tournament trails. The trails have changed so many times over the years. If you qualify by getting this place, does winning one get you the Classic? Does it not get you into the Classic? And so back then, winning an Open got you into the Classic.
And it's flip-flop back and forth. I think it's gone from where it didn't, and now it's back to where it did.
So you never fished any BFLs?
I didn't. Well, so where I live in Central Texas, BFLs are an option.
Correct.
You have to go to East Texas. You got Sam Rayburn and Toledo Bend. Those are your only two options.
Yeah.
And for me, that's like a 3+ hour drive.
So for somebody who's getting into tournaments, brand new, never joined a tournament before, what are your top 2 tips for them?
This isn't really a tip, but you better find somebody with a boat.
That's true.
No, my number 1 tip is, if you're getting into tournaments, I'm going to assume it's a team tournament type deal. Find someone you trust, and someone that's better than you are.
That's true.
I can look at every single professional angler. Someone out there has mentored them, and taught them the ropes. I mean, my dad obviously was that for me. Even though we didn't fish tournaments together, we fished a lot together. And if you can find your team partner, stick with that team partner, because there are a lot of secrets in fishing.
Yeah.
You know that.
Exactly.
And have somebody that you can trust. If you're hopping around with a bunch of different partners, all of a sudden you're sharing spots with a bunch of different people, and
that's true.
Your patterns are getting exposed. So
Yep.
number 1 tip is find you someone you trust and stick with them. So if you're just getting into tournaments and you want to kind of, you think you want to see how far you can go with it, you're going to have to fish a lot of different bodies of water. So many people have their one lake that they go to every single week. They get comfortable there, and while that's great, everybody's got a home lake that they're most comfortable with. I think it'll make you a lot better angler and a lot better tournament angler if you'll fish different bodies of water. You want to become a master of clear water, muddy water, shallow, deep, grass, rocks, you name it. So becoming more versatile is a huge key in tournament fishing.
Now, for somebody who is versatile, they've fished all the local team trails and they're doing pretty well, and they think, my wife's giving me the okay, I'm going to try to pursue professional fishing. What route do you think? Let's say they have, options. They can fish BFLs or Opens. What route do you think they should go and try, and what should they expect?
If you're trying to do it for a career and give it that full shot, I mean, you have 2 options. You've got the Opens, you've got the Toyota Series, and depending on where you live in the U.S. is how I would choose that route. So you can go from the Opens to the Elite Series, or you can go from the Toyota Series to the MLF Pro Circuit, and then to the Bass Pro Tour. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm on the Bass Pro Tour. There's no doubt about that. But depending on where you live, you can look at the schedule for that set year and be like, hey, man, these are going to set up good for my strengths. And you got to play into that if you want to try to qualify, because no matter which tour you fish, it is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, there's no easy route to becoming a professional angler.
Correct.
So I would just look at the schedule, do whatever's best for you and your family, and give it a shot.
And once you have made that decision, what's the one thing you should expect besides it being hard? We know it's going to be hard.
The biggest thing to me, like when I jumped into the Opens, was going to fish multi-day events. I had fished a lot of single-day events, and those are events where you kind of go for broke because you're trying to win. There's not points involved. You've practiced. You have time to execute your one game plan, and that's about it. But when you go to these deals where you maybe only have 2 or 3 days of practice, and then you've got 2 to 3 to 4+ days of competition.
6 for your case.
6 for my case. The amount of fish you have to find and the way you have to continually read water, that's probably the biggest shock to my system. So when I went to the Opens, all of a sudden fishing multi days, then I went to the Elites. Now you're limited to 3 days of practice and 4 days of competition. I found myself having great day ones, and then I was out of fish.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't learn to develop that pattern and flow. And it is a whole nother ball game when you start adding days back to back to back, because it's impossible to find enough fish in just a couple days of practice for a 4-day event.
Yeah.
Everybody has to be able to expand and develop those patterns and kind of go with the flow of the event.
That's good. I hadn't thought about that one. Multi-day. I can speak from experience. My FLW college tournaments in college, great 1-day events. My Bassmaster, not good 3-day events.
Multiple day events it's like a whole nother deal. It's like chess to checkers. Every day at every event, I try to dedicate a little bit of time. It doesn't mean a bunch. It may be 15 minutes, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
Time to practice fishing water.
Cool. That's really valuable.
Yep.
Let's head on to the next angler. Mr. Jacob Wheeler. So we are here with Mr. Jacob Wheeler himself. Thank you for sitting down.
Yeah, man.
And I talk with Jordan and Alton. They have different stories than each other, but you have what I kind of consider to be the true bottom to top bass fishing journey. Yeah. And so I want to ask you, what was your tournament experience like growing up as a kid? Did you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I growing up as a kid, I started tournament bass fishing when I was about 10 years old. You know, with my uncle, my dad fished a club. So club fishing is traditional, like, you know, Saturday, you know, 5 tournaments a year, 10 tournaments a year. And that's how I started. I did high school fishing, which is basically I did like youth fishing, which is now high school fishing.
Correct.
And I did that, you know, in the state of Indiana. But then, you know, that's really was my main portion of my fishing was like, you know, I went from just fishing a couple tournaments with my dad, then to like that high school youth program.
Got it. And I know from hearing your Angler of the Year speech last year at Red Crest, you talked about not really having a whole lot of, you could say a whole lot of money, but you didn't really have a whole lot of fishing gear or a nice fishing boat. And so how did you overcome that, you know, going from youth, high school into young adulthood?
Yeah, like, you know, for me, I was very fortunate to have my dad and myself. We had an old like Tide craft, as I think you'll remember. It was a 16-footer. So I got out into that a little bit. But I also had a lot of buddies that I ended up becoming friends with, and people that were like I look at as mentors. That one had an aluminum boat and the other had a bass boat, but I was able to sort of just learn from them so much. And later on in life, I was able to actually borrow. They actually helped. I borrow their boat to go fishing. Which to me, like, that was really my biggest opportunity to go out there and fish around the local lakes around Indianapolis. And that was, I mean, and then also on top of that, there was a lake, about 30-acre lake. It was a private lake that I learned how to fish different techniques, like football jigs when they came out, when Alton won the Classic, and stuff like that. I would go out there and try to learn these techniques and why they were good, because there were so many bass out there where I could catch them.
Exactly.
The problem was in Indiana, like I remember so many people telling me, hey, you need to spend your time on Monroe, Patoka, the Ohio River, because that's where all the big tournaments are at. And the problem was you could never get enough confidence and actually learn a new technique, because you couldn't generate enough bites.
Exactly.
So how do you know if you're doing it right if you don't get a bite?
That's true, yeah.
So that was always something that I felt like I had I was fortunate to have a couple lakes that were really good to sort of learn from.
You didn't go to the Opens directly. You didn't go to, I guess, college fishing.
No.
What did you do in order to start working your way up the pro fishing ladder?
So my two mentors, Brian Wallman and Brian Johnson, they both were like, hey, look, you're really good. We see like you're a really good fisherman. We feel like you have an opportunity to do this thing. And I always wanted to fish professionally. I never thought I couldn't. And what happened was, he's like, Brian Wallman, he's like, look, dude, you need to fish the BFLs. Like, that's an opportunity to move up. I know you're fishing the Federation. I was fishing the Federation stuff. And so I put my money in. I put a $150 entry fee in. To Patoka and on the Hoosier division. It was the first term of the year.
Got it.
My truck breaks down.
Oh no.
When I borrowed the boat from Brian Johnson, my truck breaks down on the way there. So I call up FLW at the time and I say, hey, look, I'm trying to make the regional because I want to, like, you know, whatever.
Correct.
So I call up FLW and I'm like, hey, look, I have $150. I mean, $150 for me at 19 years old, I was like, dude, that's a lot of money.
Exactly, yeah.
So I called them up and I said, look, the divisions the Buckeye division hasn't started yet. It's a little bit further of a drive for me, but can I change that money an entry fee and put it over there at the Buckeye division on Grand Lake St. Mary's?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. So a month later, I go fish my first BFL on Grand Lake St. Mary's, and I tie for the win.
Gotcha.
It's crazy.
Had you ever been there?
Never have. I had 1 day of practice.
So a broken truck forced you to have to go to a different division to a lake you had never been to. That's awesome.
And so I won. I tied for the win. And that sort of, if I wouldn't have won that tournament, I probably wouldn't have been able to fish the whole season. Later that year, I qualified for the regional. I qualified for the All-American through that regional at 19, and then at 20 years old, I win the All-American.
Wow.
And so that's like, it happened so quick. It was just like, what's going on?
Exactly.
From $150 being like to $100,000 in the All-American to like winning the Forestry Cup when I'm 21. It was just like, I still can't even, it's hard to look back and really reflect on it, because you're just like, what just happened?
So you went from having almost nothing, $150 was a lot, to all of a sudden you are an All-American champion. You're fishing the tour, and after your first year on tour, you win the cup?
Yes.
My goodness.
Yeah, it was it was insane. It was just like, it was crazy how it all went down. There was a lot of things that had to happen for things to go. You know, it went right. I feel like God just put His hand on me. And gave me that opportunity. I mean, I think put people in my life that really impacted what you know, I wouldn't be able to do it without so many people. Obviously, my family, my mom and dad. didn't push me to steer away from it. They believed in me, and I feel like that's a lot of what it is. I think is just I never knew that I couldn't do it.
Okay.
Like I felt like I never had any second thoughts. I never had that negativity like that. People would put, my parents were always very positive. So I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be fishing professionally. And
gotcha.
I was almost very naive because I didn't realize how hard it was to get there. But but at the same point in time, it was like, whoa, and it happened so quick.
Well, and that is probably encouraging to people because it shows the possibility is there of making a quick rise to turn your dream into your reality. But that's not the usual pathway. It usually takes people a decade or more to work their way up that ladder. Especially,
I think the learning curve is a little bit quicker right now, just because of YouTube and everything else. I feel like there's more right now. I feel like the quality of angler is higher than 10 years ago. Average angler is a better angler at targeting fish day in and day out because of all of the information that's available via online. I think for me, it really, if you're trying to like be on the professional side, and that's what you want to do, you have to give yourself a decent amount of span of time. Don't bet the house on it. Like I see some people that just swipe credit cards and put themselves in such a bad position because it's like, hey, look, I want to do this. If you're going to be able to work for it and get to that point, it takes a couple years. Look at some anglers that I felt like look at Brandon Polnick. I look at Brandon, he was inconsistent. He won a lot early on, but he's really consistent now as an angler. It takes a lot of years to get to that point.
Correct.
And it was really interesting is how, you have to work your way up. Utilize, if you're dominating a level, if you're dominating the BFL level, it's time to maybe make that move to the Opens or the Toyota Series. The only results really, it will tell you if it's time. I think if you have an opportunity to travel with someone like I did with some of my mentors, I think that's number one. I would say absolutely do that. If you can just hitch a ride and go fishing with someone in pre-practice or go fishing with one of your buddies, do that. Traveling is key. College fishing is a great thing because then you ultimately get more opportunity to fish around the country a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's something as well that gives you a better understanding that I didn't necessarily do, but it's a great opportunity. The second question
was like somebody who wants to fish for a living, similar to me, where I'm not in the tournament. So whether it's business or YouTube or content, what's your number one tip for a young person? Maybe not even young. What's your number one tip for somebody who's just entering into fishing, who wants to be in the industry, doesn't quite know where?
I think it all comes down. Passion is huge. If you're passionate about bass fishing, you're passionate about fishing in general. That's a huge deal. And work ethic. If you're getting up every day, good things come to the people that put that time and effort in. And it's someone is going to pick you up. If you're, that's the thing. It just comes down to when they see. Someone told me this. They said, "Listen, you don't get paid by what you might do. You get paid by the wake that you leave behind." Okay, so it's all the work ethic and the stuff that you produce. And if you're not getting, say you're working a 9 to 5 and you're doing something on your part time to try to get in the industry, you're running a channel, you're trying to build your brand or build what you're building what you want to do. If you want to be a videographer in the industry, or if you want to be on the PD side, people see that stuff from afar. You might not see it directly, but that they see that work, and they see how hard you work. I see how hard you work. I notice that. I see that. I'm not around you every day, but those are the things that really truly speak volumes from someone. And then you're like, that guy. It all comes down to how hard you're going to work. When you own your own business, you have to go. It is not a 9 to 5 at all. My wife gets on me all the time. She's like, all right, you got to stop working. And you have to give it your all. And you have to maintain that as well.
Exactly. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, thanks to Jacob Wheeler, and thank you to Alton Jr. and Jordan Lee. Now that brings us to the end of the interviews. Hopefully you all enjoyed and learned something from their stories. Now, one thing that I drew from all three of their stories is that fishing mentors played a part. And so if you are fishing right now and trying to aspire to fish professionally and you don't have a mentor, somebody you can fish with that is better than you, that can teach you the ways of bass fishing in ways that maybe you haven't experienced, try to find a mentor in your area. Social media makes it so easy nowadays to make friends, and so I would highly recommend finding a bass fishing mentor. Now, if you want to see one of my favorite tournament videos, I fish tournaments. Now I make YouTube videos, but I used to be an avid tournament fisherman. That's why I know so much about the industry. I will leave that video up here in the corner. My name's Tyler. I apologize for how long this video was, but it is a whole lot of helpful information, I hope, and I'll see you guys next time right here on TRF.